Have you ever felt your emotions go from full of joy to deep sadness within seconds? Imagine if there was a way to handle these emotional waves, a way to control your emotions and find true, lasting happiness. This isn't just a made-up story. It's based on the old wisdom of a Roman philosopher who lived 2,000 years ago. We'll look at Seneca's letters in this video, which often go unnoticed, but contain timeless wisdom on mastering our emotions and finding joy in the everyday joys of life. Our focus is changing in a subtle but deep way today as we explore the art of emotional mastery and the search for real, daily joy. There's more to these issues than meets the eye. It's easy to write them off as ideas for self-help books or motivational talks. Seneca's perspective on these problems that affect everyone is not only unique, but also surprisingly current and offers useful wisdom for our times. As we continue our journey, we will reveal the secret gems in Seneca's letters that reveal the way to true mental strength and lasting happiness. But why do emotional mastery? In a way, emotions pretty much run the show. They affect how you deal with problems in life, how you talk to other people, and even how you see yourself. Seneca is the embodiment of the Stoic philosophy, which offers useful methods for mastering these unpredictable aspects of our lives. Stoicism does this by letting you experience a deeper kind of joy that isn't affected by what's going on around you. What do we mean when we use the word joy in a general way? We're not talking about short-term happiness that comes from getting things or being liked by other people. What we're talking about is a deep inner joy that gives you a safe base for a rewarding life. We're talking about the kind of joy that doesn't go away when things go wrong. Seneca, who lived in political exile and was on the verge of being killed, could find this kind of joy and write about it in his deep letters. Today's video will break down 5 specific letters in which Seneca shares his tips on how to control our emotions and find that rare, unwavering joy. From the benefits of intellectual thought as a source of joy to the importance of self-control, moderation, and courage, he approaches this big project from many different points of view. Seneca will have helped us build a complete plan by the end of this video that will help us master our emotions and find joy in daily life. Do you want to know if Seneca's letters are the best guide to life? Well, they are a mix of different wisdom systems that have made history more interesting. But what makes these letters special is that they have a good mix of intellectual complexity and useful advice. Seneca doesn't just present abstract ideas, he breaks them down into practical steps that we can all start taking today. Prepare for another deep dig into Seneca's Stoic wisdom. Sit back, grab a pen and paper, or your tablet. This is more than just a look into the past. It's a search for a way of life that will never go out of style. It's a promise that we can find center, strength, and yes, joy even in the chaos and confusion that life often brings. Do you tell me to avoid the crowd, stay away from people, and be happy with my own conscience, you ask? Where are the counsels of your school that tell a man to die in the middle of active work? As for the path you think I'm urging you on sometimes, my goal in locking myself up in the doors is to be able to help more people. I never waste a day, and I take even a part of the night for. I've taken a break from men, things, and especially my own life. I'm working on ideas that will help future generations by writing them down. There are some good advices that are like prescriptions for useful drugs, and I'm writing them down because they helped me treat my own sores, which aren't completely healed, but aren't spreading anymore either. I show other men the right path, which I followed myself. Do you call these things gifts of fortune? They're traps, and any man who wants to live a safe life will do everything he can to stay away from these limed twigs of her favor. They trick us mortals, who are already the worst in this way, because we think we have them in our grasp, but they have us. This path leads us down steep slopes, and life at such heights ends in a fall. We can't even stand up to prosperity. So, stick to this good rule of life. Only give in to your body as much as it needs for good health. The body should be treated more harshly so that it doesn't disobey your mind. Eat only to satisfy your hunger. Drink only to quench your thirst. Dress only to keep out the cold, and house yourself only to avoid discomfort. It doesn't matter if the house is made of turf or different-colored imported mahogany. Look down on everything that pointless work turns into a decoration or something beautiful, and remember that only the soul is worthy of wonder, because to the soul, something great is nothing. Do you not think that when I talk to myself and future generations in this way, I'm doing better than when I go to court as a lawyer, sign a will, or help a candidate in the Senate through words or actions? Trust me, people who don't seem to be doing anything are actually doing big things. They are dealing with both real and unreal things at the same time. I read today in Epicurus's works, if you want real freedom, you have to be the slave of philosophy, so I must stop and make my usual payment to balance this letter. The man who, giving up and submitting to her, is freed right away, he is not kept waiting, because freedom is what philosophy is all about. You may ask me why I quote so many of Epicurus's wise words instead of words from our own school. But is there a reason you should think of them as Epicurus's sayings instead of common knowledge? How many poets come up with ideas that have been thought of or could be thought of by philosophers? I won't even talk about the tragedians or our national drama writers. They are also thoughtful and fall somewhere between comedy and tragedy. What a treasure trove of wise verses lies buried in the mime. How many of Publilius's lines could be spoken by actors wearing underwear as well as slippers? I'll quote one of his lines that is about philosophy, specifically the part of it we were just talking about. In it, he says that the gifts of chance shouldn't be thought of as our possessions, and that anything you achieve by lust is still foreign. What luck made yours isn't really yours, and the third thing you said with even more happiness won't be committed. The good that could be given can be taken away. I won't charge this to your expense account because I gave it to you from my own stock. Letter 23. The real happiness that comes from philosophy. Do you think I'm going to write about how nice the winter was, short and mild, or how bad the spring is, cold weather out of season, and all the other useless things people write when they don't know what to write about? No, I'm going to write something that will help both of us. For what else could this something be if not a call to sound mind? If you ask what the foundation of a sound mind is, it is not to find joy in useless things. I said that was the foundation. It is really the pinnacle. We have reached the heights if we know what we find joy in and have not put our happiness in the hands of others. A person who is driven by hope for anything, even if it is close at hand. Dear Lucilius, learn how to feel joy. Do you think I'm taking away a lot of pleasures by trying to get rid of the gifts of chance and telling you to stay away from hope, which is the sweetest thing that makes our hearts happy? On the contrary, I don't want you to ever be without joy. I want it to grow in your house, and it does grow there, if only it's inside you. Other things of joy don't fill a man's heart. I promise you that real joy is a serious thing. Can you hate death with a carefree face or a blind and gay one, as our young dandies like to say? Or can you open the door to poverty, hold back on your pleasures, or think about the endurance of pain? Someone who thinks about these things is full of joy, but it's not a happy joy. But I want you to have this joy, because it will never leave you once you know where it comes from. The yield of poor minds is on the surface. Those who are truly rich have veins that run deep, and they will give more to the person who keeps digging. Similarly, the things that make the common crowd happy are just thin pleasures on top of a lack of real joy. So, my dear Lucilius, I beg you to do the one thing that will truly make you happy. Throw away and walk on all the things that shine on the outside and are held out to you by someone else, or as something that can be obtained from someone else. Instead, look toward the true good and be happy only with what comes from your own store. What do I mean by from your own store? I mean from yourself, the best part of you, even your weak body, even though we can accomplish. But it is hard to keep within bounds in that which you believe to be good. The real good may be coveted with safety. Do you ask me what this real good is and whence it derives? I will tell you. It comes from a good conscience, from honorable purposes, from right actions, from contempt of the gifts of chance, from an even and calm way of living, which treads but one path. For men who leap from one purpose to another, or do not even leap but are carried over by a sort of hazard, how can such wavering and unstable persons possess any good that is fixed and lasting? There are only a few who control themselves and their affairs by a guiding purpose. The rest do not proceed. They are merely swept along like objects afloat in a river. And of these objects, some are held back by sluggish waters and are transported gently. Others are torn along by a more violent current. Some, which are nearest the bank, are left there as the current slackens, and others are carried out to sea by the onrush of the stream. Therefore, we should decide what we wish and abide by the decision. Now is the time for me to pay my debt. I can give you a saying of your friend Epicurus, and thus clear this letter of its obligation. It is bothersome always to be beginning life, or another which will perhaps express the meaning better. They live ill who are always beginning to live. You are right in asking why. The saying certainly stands in need of a commentary. It is because the life of such persons is always incomplete. But a man cannot stand prepared for the approach of death if he has just begun to live. We must make it our aim already to have lived long enough. No one deems that he has done so if he is just on the point of planning his life. You need not think that there are few of this kind. Practically everyone is of such a stamp. Some men indeed only begin to live when it is time for them to leave off living, and if this seems surprising to you, I shall add that which will surprise you still more. Some men have left off living before they have begun. Letter 36. The value of retirement. Tell your friend to hate those who promote him because he chose the shade of retirement and gave up his career of honors. And even though he could have achieved more, he chose peace over all of them. Let him show these critics every day how wisely he has looked out for his own interests. Those men envy will continue to march past him. Some will be pushed out of the ranks, and others will rise. There is a response that says, "So-and-so carries his prosperity well." Yes, just like he carries his liquor. So, you don't need to let this group of men convince you that someone who is surrounded by people is happy. They run to him like people running to a pool of water. But you say that people call our friend a sluggard and a trifler. You know that some men whose speech is off use the opposite words. They called him happy. What does it matter? Was he happy? It doesn't bother me that some people think he is a very rough and moody person. Aristo used to say that he liked a young man with a serious personality more than one who was happy and liked by everyone. He added, "Why, in wine, which when new seemed ha." Now is the time to learn. Is there ever a time when a man shouldn't learn? Of course not. But just as it's not appropriate for every age to study, it's also not appropriate for every age to be taught. An old man learning his ABCs is a shameful and silly thing to do. A young man should store up knowledge, while an old man should use it. Make your friend the best person he can be. Lie, he has no longer any freedom in the matter. He has pledged his word, and it is less shameful to compound with a creditor than to compound with a promising future to pay his debt of money. If your friend had been born in Parthia, he would have learned to bend the bow as a child. If he had been born in Germany, he would have started using his thin spear right away. If he had been born in the time of our ancestors, he would have learned to ride a horse and fight his enemy hand to hand. These are the jobs that the system of each race dictates for each person. To what, then, shall this friend of yours devote his attention? I say, let him learn that which is helpful against all weapons, against every kind of foe, contempt of death. Because no one doubts that death has in it something that inspires terror, so that it shocks even our souls, which nature has so molded that they love their own existence. For otherwise, there would be no need to prepare ourselves and to whet our courage to face that towards which we should move with a sort of voluntary instinct, precisely as all men tend to preserve their existence. No man learns a thing in order that if necessity arises, he may lie down with composure upon a bed of roses, but he steels his courage to this end, that he may not surrender his plighted faith to torture, and that if need be, he may someday stay out his watch in the trenches, even though wounded, without even leaning on his spear, because sleep is likely to creep over men who support themselves by any prop whatsoever. In death, there is nothing harmful, for there must exist something to which it is harmful. And yet if you are possessed by so great a craving for a longer life, reflect that none of the objects which vanish from our gaze and are reabsorbed into the world of things from which they have come forth and are soon to come forth again is annihilated. They merely end their course and do not perish, and death, which we fear and shrink from, merely interrupts life but does not steal it away. The time will return when we shall be restored to the light of day, and many men would object to this were they not brought back in forgetfulness of the past. But I mean to show you later with more care that everything which seems to perish merely changes. Since you are destined to return, you ought to depart with a tranquil mind. Watch how the universe goes around and around. You'll see that no star is out, but that they all rise and set at different times. Summer is over, but it will come back next year. Winter is low, but it will return with its own months. Night has covered the sun, but it will soon be in the middle of the day again. The wandering stars go back to where they came from. Some parts of the sky are rising all the time, and some are falling. Letter 83 on drunkenness. Who bid me give you an account of each separate day, and of the whole day too. So you must have a good opinion of me if you think that in these days of mine there is nothing to hide. At any rate, it is thus that we should live, as if we lived in plain sight of all men, and it is thus that we should think, as if there was someone who could look into our inmost souls, and there is one who can so look, for what avails it that something is hidden from man? Nothing is shut off from the sight of God. He is a witness of our souls, and he comes into the very midst of our thoughts, comes into them, I say, as one who may at any time depart. I shall therefore do as you bid, and shall gladly inform you by letter what I am doing, and in what sequence. I shall keep watching myself continually, and a most useful habit shall review each day. For this is what makes us wicked, that no one of us looks back over his own life. Our thoughts are devoted only to what we are about to do, and yet our plans for the future always depend on the past. Today has been unbroken. No one has felt the slightest part of it from me. The whole time has been divided between rest and reading. A brief space has been given over to bodily exercise, and on this ground I can thank old age. My exercise costs very little effort. As soon as I stir, I am tired, and weariness is the aim and end of exercise, no matter how strong one is. Do you ask who are my pacemakers? One is enough for me, the slave Farius, a pleasant fellow, as you know, but I shall exchange him for another. At my time of life, I need one who is of still more tender years. Varius, at any rate, says that he and I are at the same period of life, for we are both losing our teeth. Yet even now, I can scarcely follow his pace as he runs, and within a very short time I shall not be able to follow him at all. So, you see what profit we get from daily exercise. Very soon, there is a wide interval open between two persons who travel different ways. My slave is climbing up at the very moment when I am coming down, and you surely know how much quicker the latter is. Nay, I was wrong. For now, my life is not coming down. It is falling outright. Do you ask for all that how our race resulted today? We raced to a tie, something which rarely happens in a running contest. After tiring myself out in this way, for I cannot call it exercise, I took a cold bath. This, at my house, means just short of hot. I, the former cold water enthusiast who used to celebrate the new year by taking a plunge into the canal, who just as naturally as I would set out to do some reading or writing or to compose a speech, used to inaugurate the first of the year with a plunge into the Virgo aqueduct, have changed my allegiance, first to the Tiber and then to my favorite tank, which is warmed only by the sun. At times when I am most robust and when there is not a flaw in my bodily processes, I have very little energy left for bathing. After the bath, some stale bread and breakfast without a table, no need to wash the hands after such a meal. Then comes a very short nap. You know my habit. I avail myself of a scanty bit of sleep, unharnessing as it were, for I am satisfied if I can just stop staying awake. Sometimes I know that I have slept. At other times, I have a mere suspicion. As you read this, the noise of the races can be heard around me, and my ears are filled with sudden and general cheering. But this doesn't bother me or even break the flow of my thoughts. I can handle a commotion with ease. The mix of voices on one note sounds to me like the crash of waves or the wind whipping through the trees or any other sound that doesn't mean anything. So, what have I been thinking about? I'll tell you. That great man, the revered founder of our brave and holy school of philosophy, wants to keep us from drunkenness. Here are some of his reasons why. No one will entrust a secret to a drunk man, but someone will entrust a secret to a good man. Therefore, the good man will not get drunk. There are many syllogisms that aren't like Zeno's, but this one will do. No one gives a man a secret when he's asleep, but someone gives a secret to a good man, so the good man doesn't go to sleep. Posidonius argues for Zeno's case in the only way possible, but I disagree. Posidonius says that the word drunken can be used in two different ways. This is a fallacy, for the first syllogism refers to him who is actually drunk, and not to him who is about to get drunk. He who is actually drunk may be in this state for the first time and may not have the habit, whereas the drunkard is frequently free from drunkenness. That being said, if this is what Zeno meant and what he wanted us to understand, he was using a vague word to commit a fallacy, which is something that should never be done when the truth is being sought. But let us agree that he did mean what Posidonius says. Even so, it is not true that secrets are not given to someone who is often drunk. Think about how many soldiers who have been given secrets by a general, a captain, or a cent. In the famous plot to kill Gaius Caesar, the Caesar who defeated Pompey and took control of the state, both Tilia Simba and Gaius Cassius were involved. However, Cassius only drank water his whole life, while Tilia Simba was an attacker and a brawler. Simba herself said, "I carry a master, I cannot carry my liquor." So let each person think of someone they know who they wouldn't trust with wine, but would trust with weapons. However, one case comes to mind that I must share so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Life should be full of vivid examples, not just historical ones. Augustus, who was a very good person, put Piso in charge of Thrace and told him to take it over. Tiberius also trusted him while he went on vacation to Campania, leaving behind many important issues that made people angry and suspicious. I think it was because Piso's drunkenness worked out so well for the emperor that he chose a man of authority and balance who was so drunk that he was unable to do his job. No man in the bonds of drunkenness has power over his soul, as the very vats are burst by new wine, and the dregs at the bottom are raised to the surface by the strength of the fermentation. Tiberius sent many orders written in his own hand to this man, orders that he believed he ought not to trust, even to the officials of his household. As a drunk person can't hold back his food after drinking too much wine, he also can't hold back a secret. He tells everyone's secrets, including his own. This is, of course, what usually happens, but so is this. We talk about important things with people we know like to drink a lot. This claim, which is made as a defense of Zeno's syllogism, is false. It's much better to be honest about drunkenness and its bad qualities. Even the average good person stays away from them, and the perfect sage is happy just quenching his thirst. The sage, even if he sometimes lets good cheer get the best of him and goes too far for a friend's sake, never gets drunk. We'll look into whether the sage's mind gets messed up by too much wine and he makes the same mistakes as the topper. But in the meantime, if you want to show why a good man shouldn't drink, don't work it out logically. Instead, demonstrate how bad it is to consume more alcohol than one can handle and to not know one's own stomach capacity. Would you still be sure that the drunk person was crazy if he was drunk for several days? His madness is still the same, it just lasts less time. For example, Alexander of Macedon stabbed Cletus, his best friend and most loyal servant, at a banquet after he realized what he had done. He wanted to die, and he should have died. Getting drunk brings out all kinds of vice and takes away the shame that keeps us from doing bad things. More men don't do things that are against the rules because they feel bad about sinning than because they want to do good things. When alcohol gets too strong and takes over the mind, all kinds of evil come out from where they've been hiding. Being drunk doesn't make vice, it just makes it visible. At these times, the lustful man doesn't even wait for the privacy of his bedroom. He gives in to his desires right away. At these times, the immoral man brags about his flaws. At these times, your cross-grained friend doesn't hold back his tongue or his hand. At these times, the haughty man boosts his pride. At these times, the cruel man is more cruel. At these times, the slanderer is more spiteful. Every vice is given free play and comes to the fore. Anyway, we forget who we are. We are the words that stumble and aren't said clearly. The look is shaky, the step is shaky, the head is dizzy. The ceiling moves around like a cyclone is spinning the whole house. And the stomach suffers torture when the wine makes gas and makes our bowels swell. People can deal with these problems as long as they are physically strong. But what can they do when they fall asleep and their drunkenness turns into indigestion? Think of the terrible things that can happen when people are drunk in a country. This evil has turned the most brave and warlike races against their enemies, breaking down walls that had been strong for years of stubborn fighting. This evil has forced peoples to live under alien rule. Alexander, who I just talked about, went through all of his many marches, battles, winter campaigns, rivers that flowed from unknown sources, and seas without getting hurt. It was his heavy drinking and the famous bowl of Hercules that killed him. What glory is there in carrying a lot of alcohol when you've won the prize and all the other banqueters? Mark Antony was a great man with a lot of talent, but what broke him down and led him to follow bad Roman habits and vices? If not drunkenness, then love for Cleopatra, which was just as strong as alcohol and made him an enemy of the state. This it was that made him cruel when, as he sat at table, the heads of the leaders of the state were brought in. When, amid the most elaborate feasts and royal luxury, he would identify the faces and hands of men whom he had prescribed a win. Though heavy with wine, he yet thirsted for blood. It was intolerable that he was getting drunk while he did such things. How much more intolerable that he did these things while actually drunk. Cruelty usually follows winner-bibbing, for a man's soundness of mind is corrupted and made savage, just as a lingering illness makes men querulous and irritable and drives them wild. At the least crossing of their desires, so continued bouts of drunkenness bestialize the soul. For when people are often beside themselves, the habit of madness lasts on, and the vices which liquor generated retain their power even when the liquor is gone. Therefore, you should state why the wise man ought not to get drunk, explained by facts and not by mere words. The hideousness of the thing and its haunting evils. Do that which is easiest of all. Demonstrate that what men call pleasures are punishments as soon as they have exceeded new bounds. For if you try to prove that the wise man can souse himself with much wine and yet keep his course straight, even though he be in his cups, you may go on to infer by syllogisms that he will not die if he swallows poison, that he will not sleep if he takes a sleeping potion, that he will not vomit and reject the matter which clogs his stomach when you give him hellebore. But when a man's feet totter and his tongue is unsteady, what reason have you for believing that he is half sober and half drunk? Letter 92 about living a happy life. You and I will probably agree that outward things are sought for the satisfaction of the body, that the body is cherished out of respect for the soul, and that certain parts of the soul minister to us, enabling us to move and sustain life bestowed upon us just for the sake of the primary part of us. That man, I declare, is happy whom nothing makes less strong than he is. He keeps to the heights, leaning on none but himself. For one who sustains himself by any prop may fall. What is a happy life? It's peace of mind and lasting tranquility. You can have this if you have greatness of soul and the steadfastness that firmly clings to a good judgment just reached. How does a person get to this state? By getting a full picture of reality, by keeping order, measure, fitness, and a will that is kind and non-offensive, that is focused on reason and never strays from it, that commands. Yet there are certain philosophers who hold that the supreme good admits of increase because it is hardly complete when the gifts of fortune are adverse. Even Antipater, one of the great leaders of this school, admits that he ascribes some influence on externals, though only a very slight influence. You see, however, what absurdity lies in not being content with the daylight unless it is increased by a tiny fire. What importance can a spark have in the midst of this clear sunlight? If you are not contented with only that which is honorable, it must follow that you desire in addition either the kind of quiet which the Greeks call undisturbedness, or else pleasure. But the former may be attained in any case, for the mind is free from disturbance when it is fully free to contemplate the universe, and nothing distracts it from the contemplation of nature. The second, pleasure, is simply the good of cattle. We are but adding the irrational to the rational, the dishonorable to the honorable. A pleasant physical sensation affects this life of ours. Why, therefore, do you hesitate to say that all is well with a man just because all is well with his appetite? And do you rate, I will not say among heroes, but among men, the person whose supreme good is a matter of flavors and colors and sounds? Nay, let him withdraw from the ranks of this, the noblest class of living beings, second only to the gods. Let him herd with the dumb brutes, an animal whose delight is in fodder. The irrational part of the soul is split into two parts. The first part is passionate, ambitious, and out of control. It comes from the passions. The second part is lowly, lazy, and focused on pleasure. Philosophers have ignored the first part, which is better and more courageous and manly, because they thought the second part, which is nervous and shameful, was necessary for happiness. They have made reason serve the second part. They have made pleasure the most important thing in life. On top was a human face and a maiden's breast. On the bottom was a beautiful breast and a monster that was huge and shapeless, with a dolphin's tail connected to a wolf-like belly. On the other hand, horrible and quick wild animal shapes are attached to Scylla. But from what horrible shapes have these wise aces made wisdom? Man's main art is virtue itself, and it is joined to this by useless and fleeting flesh that is only good for eating. As Posidonius says, this divine virtue ends in filth, and it is attached to the higher parts, which are worshipful and heavenly, like an animal. But what if good health, rest, and not having to deal with pain aren't likely to get in the way of virtue? Shouldn't you seek all of these things? Of course I will, but not because they are good. I will seek them because they are good for me, and because I can get them by using good judgment. What will be good about them then? Only that it is a good thing to choose them. For when I dress properly, or walk as I should, or our actions are honorable, but not the things we do. You might think that what I said about clothes also applies to the body, since nature has wrapped our soul in the body like a garment. The body is its cloak. But who has ever judged the value of clothes by the closet that held them? The scabbard doesn't make the sword good or bad, so I will give you the same answer about the body, if I had the choice. That being said, you do concede that the wise man is happy, but that doesn't mean he has reached the supreme good that we've defined, unless nature also gives him the tools to do so. In other words, someone who is morally sound can't be unhappy, but they also can't be completely happy if they don't have natural gifts like good health or sound limbs. But by saying this, you also concede the alternative that seems harder to believe, that the man who is in the middle. It would be easier for virtue to make someone completely happy, since the difference between happiness and complete happiness is smaller than the difference between wretchedness and happiness. Is it possible that something so powerful that it can save a person from disaster and put them among the happy can't also do what's left and make him supremely happy? Does its strength fail at the very top of the climb? It's impossible for us to control both the good and bad things that happen in life. If a good man is not miserable even though he has many disadvantages, how is he not supremely happy even though he lacks some advantages? Just as he is not miserable because he has many disadvantages, he is not withdrawn from supreme happiness because he lacks some advantages. In fact, he is just as supremely happy without the advantages. A short space above, I remark that a tiny fire does not add to the sun's light, for by reason of the sun's brightness, any light that shines apart from the sunlight is blotted out. But one may say there are certain objects that stand in the way even of the sunlight. The sun, however, is unimpaired even in the midst of obstacles. And though an object may intervene and cut off our view thereof, the sun sticks to his work and goes on his course. Whenever he shines forth from amid the clouds, he is no smaller nor less punctual either than when he is free from clouds, since it makes a great deal of difference whether there is merely something in the way of his light or something which interferes with his shining. Similarly, obstacles take nothing away from virtue. It is no smaller but merely shines with less brilliancy in our eyes. It may perhaps be less visible and less luminous than before, but as regards itself, it is the same, and like the sun when he is eclipsed, is still, though in secret, putting forth its strength. Thus, bad things like accidents, losses, and offenses have about the same effect on virtue as a cloud does on the sun. There is someone who says that a wise person who has had bad luck with their body is neither miserable nor happy. This person is also wrong because they think that bad luck has the same effect on good things as it does on bad things. But what is worse and less honorable than putting things that should be looked down upon with things that should be respected? Respect should be shown to justice, duty, loyalty, bravery, and wisdom. On the other hand, traits like a strong leg, strong shoulders, good teeth, and healthy muscles are often bestowed upon the most worthless men in large amounts. Another example: if the wise man's body is seen as neither miserable nor fortunate, but rather as somewhere in the middle, then his life will also not be either desirable nor undesirable. But what is so stupid as to say that the wise man's life is not desirable? What is so illogical as to say that any life is neither desirable nor undesirable? Also, if a person's physical problems don't make him miserable, they can make him happy, because things that can't make him miserable also can't make him happy when he's in the best possible state. But someone will say that we know the difference between cold and hot. A lukewarm temperature is in the middle. In the same way, A is happy, B is miserable, and C is neither happy nor miserable. I want to look at this figure that is used against me. If I add more cold water to your lukewarm water, it will turn cold. But if I pour in more hot water, it will finally get hot. But your man is neither miserable nor happy, so your argument says that no matter how many problems I add to him, he will not be unhappy. This means that your figure doesn't make sense. Say I show you a man who is neither unhappy nor happy. I add blindness to his problems, but they don't make him unhappy. I also add constant and severe suffering to his problems, but they don't make him unhappy. So, if these things don't turn someone's life into misery, they also can't turn them from happiness to misery. So, if you say that a wise man can't fall from happiness to misery, he can't fall into non-happiness either. For how, if oh? Why, you ask, can't a happy life be destroyed? It can't even be broken up, which is why virtue is enough to live a happy life. But some say, isn't the wise man happier if he's lived longer and hasn't had to deal with pain than someone who has always had to deal with bad luck? Say, is he any better or more honorable? If not, then he isn't happier either. To be happier, he needs to be better or more honorable. It is impossible to squeeze virtue harder, so the happy life that depends on virtue cannot be strained any further either. This is because virtue is such a great good that it is not affected by small things like death, pain, and other body aches and pains. Pleasure does not deserve that virtue, even look at it. What is the most important thing about virtue? It's the ability to not need any days beyond the present and to not count the days that are ours. Virtue completes an eternity of good in the tiniest amount of time. These goods seem unbelievable and beyond human nature because we judge their greatness by our own weaknesses and call our vices virtues. Also, doesn't it seem even stranger that someone who is going through unbearable pain would say, I am happy? Yet Epicurus said, today and one other day have been the happiest of all, even though he was suffering from stuttering and an ulcerated stomach. Why then should the benefits that virtue bestows be incredible in the eyes of those who cultivate virtue when they are present, even in those who acknowledge pleasure as their mistress? These also declare that even in the midst of excessive pain and misfortune, the wise man will be neither wretched nor happy. If virtue only stands her ground, then happiness and virtue will stay the same. But some say that only the everlasting gods are worthy of virtue and the happy life we can achieve. Others say that we can approach the shadow and image of such goods as theirs, but we can never reach them. For the second class of rational being, man, is of an inferior order, a guardian as it were, who is too unstable to hold fast to what is best, his judgment still wavering and uncertain. He may require the faculties of sight and hearing, good health, a bodily exterior that is not loathsome, and besides, greater lengths of days conjoined with an unimpaired constitution. Suppose, however, the badness which is in full view and has previously been stirred to activity to be removed. The man is still not a good man, but he is being molded to goodness. One, however, in whom there is lacking any quality that makes for goodness is bad, but he in whose body virtue dwells, and spirit air is present, is equal to the gods. Mindful of his origin, he strives to return thither. No man does wrong in attempting to regain the heights from which he once came down, and why should you not believe that something of divinity exists in one who is a part of God? All this universe which encompasses us is one, and it is God we are associates of. God, we are his members. Our soul has capabilities and is carried thither if vices do not hold it down. Just as it is the nature of our bodies to stand erect and look upward to the sky, so the soul, which may reach out as far as it will, was framed by nature to this end, that it should desire equality with the gods. And if it makes use of its powers and stretches upward into its proper region, it is by no alien path that it struggles toward the heights. It would be a great task to journey heavenwards. The soul but returns thither when once it has found the road. It boldly marches on, scornful of all things. It casts no backward glance at wealth, gold, and silver, things which are fully worthy of the gloom in which they once lay. It values not by the sheen which smites the eyes of the ignorant, but by the mire of ancient days, whence our greed first detached and dug them out. Only those who affirm know that wealth is stored somewhere other than in men's piled-up treasure chests, that the soul, not the safe, should be filled. It is the soul that men can rule over everything and make the owner of the universe, so that it can limit its riches only by the lines of east and west and own everything like the gods do. And it can look down on the rich from above, none of which of them. Since the body is a burden that must be carried, the soul views it not as something to love, but as something to oversee. Nor is it subservient to the thing over which it is set in mastery, for no man is free who is a slave to his body. No, just like we don't think about the hair and beard clippings, the divine soul, when it's about to leave the mortal man, doesn't care where its earthly body ends up, whether it's burned up or smashed by a stone, buried or torn apart by wild animals. It doesn't matter to it, just like the afterbirth of a newborn baby doesn't matter to its parents. I don't want anyone to do my funeral or hand over my body to anyone else. Nature has made sure that no one goes unburied. Time will bury someone whom cruelty has thrown away. Those were very wise words that Messina spoke. I want no grave, for nature does provide for unwanted bodies' burial. You'd think that this was the saying of a man with strong morals. He did have good and strong natural gifts, but when he was doing well, he weakened them by being careless. Goodbye. As we come to the end of this enlightening look into Seneca's Stoic principles, it is clear that each of these carefully chosen letters offers a different way to look at the complexity of human emotions and the search for real happiness. Today, we have explored a vast area of Stoic philosophy, building on the basic ideas we learned in the previous video and going even deeper into how these ideas apply to everyday life. Throughout these letters, the main idea is the Stoic focus on the inner over the outer, a turn toward our inner selves to find the stability, contentment, and emotional resilience that the outside world can't give us. By seeking solitude for self-reflection, as mentioned in the first letter, we give ourselves the mental clarity we need to deal with life's many challenges. This self-imposed solitude is not an escape, but a strategy for We talked about the unspoken truth that joy is an internal state that doesn't depend on outside circumstances. The elusive happiness we're always looking for in things like money, status, or other people's approval has always been inside us. The key is to realize that joy isn't something that can be found. It's something that can be grown and kept up. It starts with a change in perspective and values. The third letter helped us better understand the idea of retirement, not as the end of life or a retreat into oblivion, but as the Stoic practice of stepping back from the chaos to focus on what's important. It's about taking a moment to reorient our life's compass, to breathe, think, and then re-engage with the world from a place of renewed strength and wisdom. When we talked about drunkenness and excess in the fourth letter, we looked at the darker sides of human behavior that everyone has dealt with in some way. Seneca reminds us that the goal should always be moderation, self-control, and inner harmony, no matter what kind of excess it is: food, drink, or even emotions. Finally, we reach the highest goal that people have: to live a happy life. This isn't a short-term feeling. It's a long-lasting state of well-being that comes from living an ethical life, being mindful, and having a real understanding of our place in the universe. It's as if each letter is a stepping stone that helps us cross the rough waters of life and reach a state of unwavering joy and emotional balance. Here is my call to action for you. Take just one of these principles, whether it be the strategy of seclusion for self-reflection, the internal cultivation of joy, the letter of tactical withdrawal, the mastery of self-control, or the pursuit of genuine happiness, and apply it consciously for the next week. Do not just sit back and take in wisdom, take part in your own change. The path to emotional mastery and true joy is not a watching sport. It is what life is all about.